Hello, I'm Michael Leyva. I'm the Contracts and Grants Coordinator for the Arizona Developmental Disabilities Planning Council. My colleague Jason Sneed, who is the Research and Communications Specialist, have the privilege of interviewing a good friend to the disability community, Bill Manson. And we have a series of questions that we wanted to ask him and to really highlight National Disability Employment Awareness Month, which is October. So with that, I'm gonna go ahead and kick it off, and I'm gonna have Bill Manson introduce himself. And Bill, if you can tell us what your position is and what you do for your organization and how you promote employer engagement.
So hi, my name is Bill Manson. I am the Director of Employment Services for RI International. It's an agency that's been in Arizona several years and so forth. And I manage that program for providing supported employment services to the community, to individuals living with disabilities.
All right, I guess it's my turn now. Why is employment important to the disability community?
Well, I think for many reasons. One of the several reasons that I find is that, first of all, it offers integration into the community for individuals living with disability, as well as it helps them feel a part of the workforce that it's out there, so to feel as equals to others. It provides socialization, which is an important factor in anyone's life, I believe. And then also it gives them an income that empowers them to create a pathway to independence. Some of the other things that it may provide is freedom of choices, especially as a consumer, where it instills pride that they can work and earn a livable wage.
That's a good answer. Good job.
Bill, what is a common belief or myth held by many business owners or human resource managers regarding hiring individuals with disabilities?
That's a very good question. So typically what happens is that many employers have a fear of hiring individuals with disabilities that are living with disabilities, as often because they believe if they hire a candidate from the population of those individuals, that there could be some type of repercussion legally because of the different rights and because they're a protected group by the federal laws and so forth and human resources. And so sometimes they're worried that if the person doesn't meet the minimum standards or performance, and they may have to let that person go, that the person may take legal action against them. And I think that's really a myth. The ADA, which is the American Disabilities Act, was really just barely written 30 years ago. There's still a lot of a learning curve for the community, as well as employers and owners and business managers and so forth. And it was really just to protect, individuals living with disabilities who were being discriminated against for obvious reasons, not necessarily things that are everyday business practices. So what I do typically, it's unfortunate, I think, that I've learned through interaction with employers that most of their fear is instilled by what they don't know. And that typically is that a good part of the population of individuals, and I think it's close to maybe 80% in the United States, according to the Department of Labor, have what we call undetectable disabilities, or something that you couldn't tell that individual had a disability just by physically looking at them. So, those people, of course, that may be experiencing blindness or hearing impairments or different things, they may use a wheelchair for mobility or different things like that. Those are obviously individuals that we can recognize by just simply looking at them. But the great deal of the population are mostly individuals that live with disabilities that are not detectable by the human eye. So that's one of the fears I believe that we have to overcome. And then the example that I like to use with employers is that they oftentimes don't know all the different benefits of hiring an individual that lives with disabilities. Almost, I would say 95% of employers I talk to have no idea that there is a national tax credit for them through the Work Opportunity Tax program that the federal government provides. They also don't know some of the statistics that have been proven that show that individuals with disabilities typically stay longer in their jobs, and they usually don't change unless there's a reason that maybe they're looking for career growth or looking for different opportunities, or maybe it's just not the right environment for them and so forth. So retention is a huge thing today for employers. If employers have turnover, it costs them a great deal of money. The time that's put forth in that between interviewing, advertising, trying to recruit candidates and so forth, and just, trying to work with different individuals that might be candidates and so forth. The other thing is many employers don't know that we have a lot of supports for them, that the agencies that typically are getting funding either through state or federal dollars pay for free services that's paid by the taxes that those employers pay. And those services are free to them because they are paid through their tax dollars. So that's a beautiful thing too. And they don't know that those supports are available. So those are some of the things that I've experienced with that.
So, okay, the fourth question is, what are some of the key components to encourage employers to hire people with disabilities, which you already answered? And what are some of the typical fears of employers that may hinder from hiring people with disabilities?
Yeah, so there were some duplicates in there. One of the things I like to focus on in this question is the supports that agencies and job coaches can provide at no cost, again, because those are paid through agencies, and the supports that are funded through different fundraising, through, federal and state dollars and so forth, and tax dollars. Some of the other things too that is taken in consideration is a lot of times, I have to encourage employers to focus on the person's abilities, not their disabilities. And sometimes I think it's taken for granted that a lot of people who are individuals living with disabilities in our communities are very gifted and talented individuals. They may simply need some training or guidance or on-site, training and so forth, but their individuals contribute just like anybody else. And actually they're going to be probably just as good, if not better, employees than some others. So,
Bill, how can we engage employers? What supports and benefits are available to employers who are willing to hire people with disabilities?
So the approach that I take to engage employers, and that's changed, by the way, just like business changes, throughout the ages. The old school way, which I really tried to discourage individuals from approaching an employer from this aspect, was that kind of guilting the employer into hiring the individual with a disability because they were saying that was the right thing to do. It was the obligation of the community and so forth and things like that. And that really, I think, kind of put a bad taste in the mouth of the employers when they felt guilted into that, rather than it being a choice. And I think the choice really comes from when we go to them, that we treat them as an equal partner. And that's what I always tell job developers or employment specialists or different people that are in our community that work with individuals with disabilities. When you go out to talk to an employer, you don't want to talk that individual that's the hiring manager or the recruiter or human resource representative, whoever that might be, into hiring that person because of what you said. You want them to really hire that individual based on their abilities, based on the education they bring, the talent, and all the different things that they have to offer, just like any other candidate. And I find that when that's a mutual agreement, so that both parties agree that it's the best decision, and that person decides also that's the right position that they want to hold because it's built on their strengths and on the different things that they really want to do, which is really quite important for not just individuals with disabilities, but any of us. Nobody wants to go to a job that they either don't like or they don't feel they're competent to be able to perform, with the abilities they have or the training they'll be provided. So I always try to make sure that the employer is actually a business partner, and also let them know and educate them about how that we can provide those free supports and what that means. So I've had many employers that were much more willing to take a risk, even though we really know and we truly believe, those of us that work with individuals with abilities, we know that they have the ability to do that job. But sometimes the employer, it's like any candidate when they first hire them, they don't know what they're getting until that individual actually shows up that first day and when they start performing the duties and responsibilities they've been assigned. So what I let them know is that we can provide an on-site job coach. We can provide coaching off-site if that's not appropriate for them, or maybe it interrupts with some of the business practices, such as in a retail environment and so forth, things like that. And then we can also, help them out with some of the other things that maybe are paperwork for those tax credits and so forth that maybe they're not knowledgeable about.
Okay, Bill, how can we best support businesses that hire people with disabilities?
So I kind of covered that part in the last question. We're going to provide job coaching, counseling, member offsite or on-site with the employer's permission. Some of the good examples of several employers who have implemented initiatives to target hiring people with disabilities are companies that have what I call inclusive hiring practices, meaning they hire people from all types of populations, all backgrounds, whether it be ethnicity or your religious beliefs or your race, whatever that might be, it really doesn't matter. They don't label individuals. They're just willing to hire whomever is the qualified candidate. And that's, part of the individuals that are people living with disabilities as well. So some of those companies that I know that I've worked with, I've actually even fulfilled some, they're not really contracts, but just agreements that they draft up between you and them. Walgreens has a READY program, REDI, which stands for Retail Employment Initiative for People with Disabilities. The AMC Theaters has the FOCUS program. Excuse me, TJX companies, which are the TJ Maxx's, the Home Goods, and I believe Marshall's is the other company they own. They have a national initiative to offer internships and training programs. Pepsi Corporation does it right here in the Valley and also across the nation. AT&T, Amazon, Marriott Hotels, and there's many, many more. But more and more companies, especially your larger companies, are starting to see that individuals living with disabilities is a great part of their workforce and really provides some great opportunities.
Those are great programs, Bill, that you mentioned. But what about for small businesses? Because everything I've read is that it's a small business owner that really does the most hiring, that has the most jobs out there. So how do we connect with them? How do we create awareness about this pool of people with disabilities, this labor pool that want to work, but they don't know about that job that's opening there? So how do we make that connection?
So that's an interesting question, because that's been part of my responsibility at probably the last 3 agencies I worked at, was going out and doing community outreach and creating those partnerships, as I had described earlier, and letting them know all the different supports, all the tax credits, especially for your small to medium-sized business. That's could have a huge impact. And a lot of people don't know those are actual credits. They're not tax deductions. So they actually come right off the top of their, off of their taxes that are owed each year. And a small to medium-sized business person that's an owner, that could have a huge impact on their business. Now, even though we're talking to small to medium-sized businesses, that was the reason Amazon program, they actually had an individual who was an employment specialist that worked for a nonprofit agency up in Washington State that went to them and said, hey, did you know that for each individual that you hire, there's a tax credit? You have to retain the person either the first $6,000 of gross pay or 6 months minimum before the federal government gives you that tax credit. There's a couple of small forms to fill out. And when they saw that program and they saw what it could do, and then he also explained to them how they could provide the job coaching at no charge to them on site, they actually ended up recruiting that individual internally, and that person now goes state to state to establish Amazon's hiring program for people with disabilities. Now, for the small to medium-sized business, actually, you're right, Mike, those are typically the more receptive employers, believe it or not. They are looking for people who are dependable. They're looking for someone that's going to be there for a long time, because certainly turnover is something that costs all businesses, but really hits your small to medium-sized business, because they typically don't have the annual revenue to be able to hire over a certain number of employees. It's usually less than 50 employees. So what we do is we really just try to work with them and let them know about all the different free services that are provided through their tax dollars, the tax credits, the benefits. Some of the things that small to medium-sized businesses have seen that's had a huge impact is many of them don't realize until after they've hired the individual is that person's family member, their friends, the people they go to church with, the people that are in their social circles. Once they get hired there, they're very excited about that, for that person having that opportunity. And then they come and trade there, and they may be buying their products or services just simply because that individual works there and because that employer gave that person an opportunity.
Well, this is all good information. The next question I have for you is, what is the most effective way to get a job during the pandemic for a person with a disability? This is a funny question to me, because I actually got my job during the pandemic. So anyway, but you can go ahead and give your answer. So.
That's awesome, Jason. So congratulations on that, first of all, Jason. And then the response that I have to that is, the common tools for seeking employment during a time such as we're in and experiencing typically is the internet. Especially right now, because there's really not a lot of human to human contact encouraged because of what we're dealing with COVID-19 and so forth. But the other thing is that this applies even when we're not in this pandemic, as most employers are using the internet and social media. I know that small to medium-sized businesses might still take a paper application, but even a lot of them are using online tools to manage their applicants so that they can have it electronically instead of having it all on paper and so forth. And most companies now are asking you to apply online. So the other thing, which I kind of mentioned earlier, is works both, during the pandemic as well as when we get past this pandemic, and that's just your circle of friends, network of people that you know in social circles or social organizations you might participate in. Oftentimes know about jobs. Many times I have experience as working with my employment specialist, people that got hired, the reason they got hired or even knew about a job was because another individual that they knew that maybe was being served by the same agency, or maybe they just knew that person in whatever social circle that they travel in. They just word of mouth, basically. And, word of mouth is really strong. It's a lot about who you know nowadays when it comes to jobs. Michael can tell you, he's known me several years. I was just counting because I was talking to a member recently. The last 4 jobs that I secured were based on relationships. It was somebody that recommended me or knew me that worked at that particular company or agency. So
tell me about Phoenix Dream Jobs. I've seen the electronic listing, which is great, but how do you collect information from employers, and how do you generate that list of employment opportunities?
So Phoenix Dream Jobs, we changed the name of it. It originally was just Hot Job Leads, and we changed it to the Phoenix Dream Jobs because I've been the chair of the Dream Job Fair, which is a specific job fair that's targeted at individuals with disabilities, but also we invite college students and people without disabilities just as well. So it's really an inclusive audience. But we have 44 employers. If it weren't during the pandemic, which that's sort of a barrier right now, we'd be doing it this very month because it's National Disability Employment Awareness Month. And that fair started 9 years ago. So what I had decided during that time, as of 2012, which was 8 years ago, on my own, I started doing realizing that there was a need out there for people to connect to employers that had open positions. So as I was doing my community outreach and community development, I started developing those relationships, business relationships with owners, with employers, with human resource professionals that all represented the companies from the small to the large corporations. And I asked them, they spend a great deal on advertisement and outreach and posting on such sites as Indeed or Monster.com and all those different job sites. What if you had a free service that I could outreach and I could send that to individuals that are recruiters, that are job developers, that are job seekers, that are different representatives that work in the community with individuals with disabilities, to outreach to them as candidates. And so it started off small, like any program does usually, or just to say, project. And now I have a little over 350 employers that send me job leads. Of course, not every one of those sends me job leads every week, but there is a lot of jobs right now that are available out there. And they email them to me in flyers and different types of electronic, and then I send them out now through Constant Contact. And that goes out to just over 250 contacts that I have that receive those. And that's a free service. So that's pretty attractive to any employer. And when they see the outreach and the number of people that receive that, they know that that really blossoms as it goes out.
Well, you already answered the next question there. How many employers participate in the dream and Phoenix Dreams? But also, so how can we help increase that number of employers for you?
So just, I know you guys get that. If you could just refer them to that website or to the Constant Contact email that I have on there, Hot Job Leads 2020. They can send those to that, or they can send them to my business email, either one. And I'm always happy to add, either new recipients that want the job leads or new employers that want to get their postings out there.
Bill, is there a statewide job portal that you know of?
Absolutely. So I'm not sure. I believe it was about 5 years ago when it was first developed. The state of Arizona now is represented both by the city employment services, the county employment services, and the state employment services. Governor Ducey wanted to have some continuity, so he developed the name with his team, Arizona at Work. And many of us know that name because it's out there fairly strong. And what it did was, I remember I used to sit on the Maricopa Workforce Connections Board, and one of my biggest complaints was, we're all doing the same thing, so why are we duplicating our services? Why aren't we collaborating together and sharing our different resources and our strengths and the different things that we know that can help us, help the individuals that we're working with find jobs? So I was really happy to see that. That website is by Arizona at Work and was developed, and it's called azjobconnection.gov. Now, as of today, I checked, and they have over 65,000 job postings on there from employers statewide. They have over 12,000 job applicants with resumes that are registered users on that site as well. So, which is incredible if you think about it. There's only 12,000 people on there with 65,000 jobs available. So more and more, they're trying to get people enrolled on that and get them using it and really seeing that it's a great tool. Anybody that's a company that's a federal contractor or holds a federal contract are required to reach out to diverse populations, which can include all kinds of individuals and includes people living with disabilities. So they are required to register on there and put their postings on there. And if they need help with that, those individuals that work for one of the Arizona at Work, whether it be the state, the county, or the city services, can help them do that.
All right, Bill, final question. What is your thoughts on employment first, and what do you think about it, and how can we improve it?
So I'm a huge advocate for employment first. First, I just wanted to kind of read a real short statement. Many people don't know what employment first is, and I don't know who's going to be watching the video. So employment first is a state and federal initiative to promote people living with disabilities who desire to work to become part of their community's inclusive workforce, and was signed by a proclamation by Governor Doug Ducey himself. So people who work have a higher quality of life, a greater community participation, are more likely to make their own choices in life. But one of the interesting things that I found with Employment First coming on board, and in 2014, oftentimes these statistics are behind a few years, just so you know, because it's hard to gather all those different data. But in 2014, only 22% of people in the Arizona DDD system receiving day treatment services were integrated into employment. And we all know that there's a great deal of individuals that have just a variety of abilities and talents and desire to work out in the community. They just simply need the right guidance and the right coaching and the support that it takes to maybe help them with that. I believe personally that it's the right and informed choice for every individual with disability to be integrated in our community by gaining independence, earning a livable wage, and in turn they become taxpayers. They have the right and ability to vote and participate just as any other citizen does on a daily basis. And the last thing I just like to leave you with, so people will be encouraged by this, is that in the state of Arizona, individuals who are disabilities are 40 to 50% less likely to be employed than individuals without disabilities. A lot of people don't realize it, but most of the individuals that are living with disabilities, they may be with a guardian or a parent, but many of them are independent. And part of that independence, when they're dependent on government funding only, they are living at a poverty level. And that should not be happening in this country, with the rich country of the United States that we have. They have just as much right, and they have just as many opportunities as anybody else. So we just really need to get out there and encourage people, not only those people that want to work that are in our population of people with disabilities, but also those people that are hiring them and are willing to have an inclusive workforce.
Bill, we really appreciate you taking time to share information with us today and in the month of October, as we've been talking and sharing information. It's National Disability Employment Awareness Month, and we need to recognize how important employment is for people with disabilities. If someone wants to get in contact with you, Bill, how do they do that? Do you have some contact information that you can share?
Yeah, they can reach me either at the Job Leads email, which is hotjobleads2020@cox.net, or they reach me at my employment, which is william.manson@riinternational.com.